Most people moving to Dayton look at the same handful of suburbs. They hear Springboro, Beavercreek, Centerville, and Oakwood, and those are popular for very good reasons. But some of the biggest opportunities around Dayton are not necessarily in the most recognizable names. They are in the areas where new housing, major employers, infrastructure improvements, and redevelopment are beginning to stack on top of each other. And that matters because choosing the right part of the Dayton area can affect far more than the price of the house. It can affect your daily commute, the type of home you can buy, your access to restaurants and shopping, and how easily that home may appeal to another buyer when it is eventually time to sell. So before you relocate to Dayton or buy your next home here, there are 3 things you need to understand. First, which areas are experiencing sustainable growth and which ones are simply having a temporary jump in home prices. Second, what is actually driving demand in those areas? And third, which growth corridor makes the most sense for the way you want to live? I'm Carrie Davis, a local real estate agent serving the Dayton area and the corridor between Dayton and Cincinnati. On this channel, I give you the honest version of what it is actually like to live here, the good, the frustrating, and the things you may not realize until after you move. Today, we're looking at 5 Dayton area growth pockets that buyers should have on their radar in 2026. And these are 5 very different areas, so stay with me because the best one may not be the most obvious one. Let's start with the area where employment continues to drive housing demand, the Beavercreek, Fairborn, Wright-Patterson corridor. The first area I would watch is the corridor surrounding the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, particularly Beavercreek and Fairborn, and portions of eastern Montgomery and western Greene County. Now, I know this is not a new growth story. Wright-Patterson has influenced the Dayton housing market for decades, but the base, the defense industry, healthcare, research, and the surrounding technology, employers continue to create a level of stability that many similarly sized Midwestern markets simply don't have. That does not mean home prices can never fall, and it certainly does not mean every neighborhood surrounding the base performs the same way. What it does mean is that this side of Dayton has a consistent stream of people who need housing. Some are relocating for military assignments, others are civilian employees, engineers, researchers, medical professionals, or contractors working in and around the base. And many of them are trying to balance these 3 things: a manageable commute, convenient access to shopping and services, and a home that will be relatively easy to resell if they are transferred again in several years. One major advantage is convenience. Depending on where you live and which gate or section of the base you need to reach, many Beavercreek locations offer a very practical commute. You also have extensive shopping and dining around Fairfield Commons, Pentagon Boulevard, and the surrounding commercial corridors. You will find older ranch homes, established subdivisions, larger properties with more land, newer planned communities, condominiums, and new construction. That variety can be a major advantage, but it also means buyers need to pay attention to the exact location. Some properties may be close to shopping, but further from the highway. Others may have a convenient commute, but sit near a busy road. And some newer developments may include additional assessments or community development charges that need to be understood before purchasing. Fairborn offers a different value proposition. It is extremely convenient to Wright-Patterson, Wright State University, and the I-675 corridor, but buyers can sometimes find a lower entry price than they would in parts of Beavercreek. The trade-off is that the housing stock can vary considerably from one street to the next. You may find smaller, mid-century homes, properties that need updating, newer developments, and areas influenced heavily by rental demand. Fairborn can make sense for buyers who value proximity and price over having the newest house or the largest lot. It can also appeal to people who know that they may be in Dayton for only a limited number of years and want to stay near the base. So who does this corridor work best for? The Beavercreek-Fairborn corridor tends to make the most sense for buyers who prioritize a shorter commute to Wright-Patt, easy access to I-675, and a wide variety of housing options. Proximity to shopping, healthcare, and major employers The biggest mistake I see is someone choosing a house based only on the number of miles to the base. Wright-Patterson is enormous. You need to know which area or gate you will use because two houses that look equally close on a map can produce very different daily commutes. Area number 2, Springboro, Clearcreek Township, and the southern I-75 corridor. The second growth area is one that I know extremely well because it's where I live. This corridor has been attracting buyers for years, but demand continues because of its location between Dayton and Cincinnati. Springboro is not truly halfway between Dayton and downtown Cincinnati, but it does offer access to both employment markets. That becomes valuable when one person works closer to Dayton and the other works towards Cincinnati or Mason, Westchester, or anywhere in the northern Cincinnati suburbs. You are also close to I-75, Austin Landing, healthcare facilities, retail, and a growing number of restaurants and services throughout southern Montgomery and northern Warren counties. So why do buyers continue to choose it? The appeal of Springboro is not based on one giant redevelopment project. It is a combination of location, established housing, continued residential construction, and access to two major metropolitan areas. There is also a mix of lifestyles that are available. You can live in a traditional subdivision. You can purchase an older home near the center of the town. You can choose a low-maintenance housing or move farther into Clearcreek Township, where properties have more land and less of a suburban feel. The southern corridor also has fewer large pieces of easily developable land than some of the outer portions of the Dayton region, which can help support demand for existing homes, but it can also make new construction more expensive. So who does this area work best for? Springboro and Clearcreek Township often appeal to the buyers who want access to both Dayton and Cincinnati, a suburban or semi-rural setting, a broad selection of move-up housing, and convenient access to I-75 without living directly inside Dayton or Cincinnati. The main trade-off is price. Buyers often compare Springboro with Miamisburg, Centerville, Lebanon, Franklin, Bellbrook, and Clearcreek Township. A buyer may get more area or more house in one area, lower taxes in another, a shorter commute somewhere else, or more land by simply moving a little bit further out. So there is no universally best choice. The right answer depends on where you work, what type of home you want, and which expenses matter the most to you. Area number 3, West Carrollton, Miamisburg, and the Great Miami River Corridor. The third area is one I believe people should be paying much more attention to, the river corridor running through West Carrollton and Miamisburg. These communities are not growing for exactly the same reason as Beavercreek or Springboro. This is primarily a redevelopment and connectivity story. For years, parts of the Great Miami River corridor were overlooked. Now communities along the river are focusing more heavily on waterfront development, trails, recreation, housing, entertainment, and creating places where people can spend time rather than just simply drive through. West Carrollton may be one of the more interesting watch what happens next areas south of Dayton. The city has been working to transform its riverfront and create a more defined destination near the Great Miami River. That kind of redevelopment does not change a housing market overnight. It usually happens gradually. First, infrastructure and public improvements arrive. Then the restaurants, entertainment, or mixed-use projects begin drawing people into the area. And then after that, the buyers may start reconsidering nearby neighborhoods that they previously overlooked. West Carrollton also has practical advantages. It sits close to I-75 with relatively straightforward access north toward downtown Dayton and south toward Miamisburg, Springboro, and the Austin Landing area. Housing prices have historically been more approachable than in several of the nearby southern suburbs. That creates potential opportunity, but buyers need to be selective. The housing is mostly established rather than brand new. Homes may have smaller floor plans, older mechanical systems, or deferred maintenance. Flood zones and insurance requirements also need to be checked carefully when considering any property near a river, not guessed based on appearance appearance or the distance from the water. Miamisburg is a more mature market, but it continues to benefit from several different demand drivers. You have a historic downtown, river access, established neighborhoods, and newer development near Austin Landing, and convenient access to I-75. The housing varies tremendously here. Near downtown, you will see older homes with character, smaller lots, and they all really have some good renovation potential. If you go further east, you will find more traditional subdivisions, condos, and newer developments. And around the broader Miamisburg, Miami Township area, you have significant retail, healthcare, and employment access. One thing that I like about Miamisburg from a real estate standpoint is that buyers at several price points can at least explore it. It is not limited to one type of housing or one type of buyer, but that variety means values can change quickly between the neighborhoods. A beautifully renovated historic home and a newer suburban home may be priced similarly, but the ownership experience will be completely different. One may offer charm and walkability, but require more maintenance. The other might be offering a little more of a modern floor plan, but with less of that architectural character. So who does this work best for? West Carrollton and Miamisburg can make sense for the buyers who want access to I-75, more attainable options than some of the southern suburbs, established homes and neighborhoods, river trails, downtown amenities or redevelopment potential, and reasonable access to both Dayton and the southern employment corridor. This is an area where I would not recommend buying solely because someone says it's up and coming. Buy the home because it works for your life today. Treat future development as a potential bonus, not as a guaranteed return. Area number 4, Xenia and Eastern Greene County Growth Pocket. Xenia is frequently overlooked by people relocating to Dayton because it sits farther east and does not have the same name recognition as Beavercreek, Centerville, or Springboro. But it does offer something that is becoming harder to find in the closer-in suburbs, and that's room to grow. There is still land available for residential development, and buyers may find newer homes or larger lots at prices that compare favorably with Beavercreek, Bellbrook, or Springboro. The location and commute from Xenia can be particularly practical for people who are working around Wright-Patterson's Area B, depending on the exact destination and the route. It also provides access toward Beavercreek, Yellow Springs, Wilmington, and other parts of Greene County. However, Xenia is not directly on an interstate. That is one of its most important trade-offs. A commute that looks reasonable in miles may involve some state routes and local roads rather than an interstate. Buyers should drive the route during the time that they would actually commute, not just rely on a mapping app or on a Sunday afternoon. Downtown and recreation. Xenia has a traditional downtown and is especially well known within the region for its trail systems. The area acts as a major connection point for several bike trails, which gives it a recreational identity that is different from many of the Dayton suburbs. You will find older homes near the center of town, mid-century properties, traditional subdivisions, and newer construction on the outskirts. There can be a noticeable difference between individual streets and developments, so this is another area where broad online descriptions are not always helpful. So who does Xenia work best for? Xenia may work well for the buyers who prioritize more house or land for the money, access to Greene County and Wright-Patterson, newer housing opportunities, outdoor recreation, and a location that feels separate from the more heavily developed I-75 corridor. The trade-off is that buyers may have a longer or less direct drive to major shopping, downtown Dayton, or destinations on the west side of the region. Okay, Area 5. Tipp City, Troy, and the northern I-75 corridor. This area deserves more attention from relocating buyers, especially those who work north of Dayton, travel frequently, or do not need to commute south every day. For years, many relocation searches kind of stopped around Vandalia, but buyers looking for newer homes, downtown character, or additional space have increasingly expanded their search into Tipp City and Troy. Tipp City offers a combination that is difficult to replicate. It is a recognizable historic downtown, has established neighborhoods and a newer residential development around the edges. It also has direct access to I-75. That allows buyers to live in a smaller community while maintaining access to Dayton, the airport, and employers throughout the northern corridor. The challenge is supply. Tipp City is not a huge market. When a particularly desirable home or a hard-to-find property becomes available, buyers may face limited alternatives. The town also has older housing near its center, so buyers need to pay attention to electrical systems, plumbing, foundation, drainage, and previous renovations. A house can look beautifully updated upstairs while still having expensive issues in the basement, behind the walls, or even underground. Troy, on the other hand, offers a larger housing market and a broader mix of property types. You have a substantial historic downtown, older neighborhoods, post-war homes, subdivisions, condos, and newer construction. Troy is farther from downtown Dayton, but that may not matter to someone who is working remotely, working in Miami County, or commuting only occasionally. It can also appeal to buyers who want access to restaurants, community events, and a true downtown setting without living in the urban core of Dayton. Tipp City and Troy also benefit from their position along I-75 and their proximity to the Dayton International Airport, Vandalia, and northern Montgomery County. The airport itself is not necessarily a daily destination for most buyers, but the surrounding logistics, distribution, and industrial corridors contribute to regional employment. That can support housing demand across the northern part of the metro. But buyers should be realistic about commuting. Living in Troy while working in Springboro, Mason, or Cincinnati is an entirely different experience than living in Troy and working near Vandalia or from home. Dayton traffic may be lighter than traffic in many larger cities, but distance still matters, especially during construction, bad weather, or an accident on I-75. Tipp City and Troy may be a strong fit for buyers who want direct access to I-75, a smaller city or historic downtown atmosphere, newer construction or more space outside the inner suburbs, proximity to northern Dayton area employers, and access to the airport and Miami County. The trade-off is distance from southern Dayton, Warren County, and Cincinnati. So which Dayton growth area is right for you? Let's bring it all together. Let's bring all 5 of these areas together. So if your priority is Wright-Patterson and employment stability, start with Beavercreek, Fairborn, and the Eastern Corridor. If you need access to both Dayton and Cincinnati, Springboro, Clearcreek Township deserve a closer look. If you are interested in housing, interstate access, and riverfront development, look at West Carrollton and Miamisburg. If you want newer housing possibilities, more land, or a Greene County location, consider Xenia. And if you work north of Dayton, travel frequently, or want a smaller city atmosphere, Tipp City and Troy make the most sense. Real estate is extremely local. Sometimes it's neighborhood by neighborhood. Sometimes it can even be street by street. And occasionally, one side of the street versus the other. That is why when I work with someone who is relocating to Dayton, I do not start by telling them where they should live. I start by asking questions. Where are you going to be working? How many days a week do you commute? Do you want an older house with character or something newer and easier to maintain? Those answers usually narrow down the Dayton area much more effectively than a generic list of the best suburbs. Buyers. Here's why this matters. For buyers, understanding growth corridors helps you look beyond the house itself. You are evaluating the location, nearby employment, infrastructure, housing supply, and future competition. But no real estate agent can promise that a particular neighborhood will appreciate. Markets change. And the goal is not to predict the future perfectly. The goal is to make a well-informed purchase that works for you, even if future growth happens more slowly than expected. And sellers, here's why this matters for you. For sellers, the same information can help you understand where your buyer may be coming from and what alternatives they are considering. That is why pricing and positioning a home correctly really matters so much. Now I want to hear from you. Which Dayton area community do you think is positioned for the most growth over the next 5 to 10 years? And I know you love to tell me which one I missed. So tell me, who did I miss? Should Centerville and Washington Township be on this list? What about Bellbrook and Sugar Creek Township? Heber Heights? Downtown Dayton? Franklin? Leave your answers in the comments because I may do a second video using the areas that you suggest. And if you are thinking about moving to the Dayton area, you can call, text, or email me. I do work with a limited number of clients at a time because I want to remain personally involved throughout the process. You can also download my free relocation guide using the link below. It walks you through all the different parts of the Dayton area, commuting considerations, and some of the things that you need to know before choosing where to live. Be sure to subscribe for more honest information about living in Dayton, Ohio, and I'll see you in the next one.